Da 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 da! What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I am so grateful to be here. I don't know who's going to pop in to keep me company, but I thought, maybe we would just talk about the weather. In actuality, it's for a lot of people a way to get into a conversation. We were talking about being social, how important it is this week, you know, to be social. And lots of us are not social people. If it wasn't for the experiences, if it wasn't for the jobs that I took during the course of my life, I think I would have been a pretty private person. I would have been somebody who would never have had the opportunity to get married because I wouldn't have been able to know how to socially connect. If I hadn't decided to have an operation when I was 28 years old and right lost a ton of weight, I wouldn't have been able to experience the other side of the boundary. You know what I mean? The other side where, my friends and family all got to have these experiences. And for me, staying on the sidelines, being the spectator, being the student, that I didn't have those choices, right? I didn't have those opportunities to truly connect with people outside of my own family. We were a very I think we were pretty isolated growing up. It's by my parents' choices and being the kids, we went along with that. And it wasn't that we didn't have adventures, we just had adventures on our own. You know, None of us kids had lots of friends growing up. We had a few, right? And those few were important and they were close friends, but that's all we needed. And I think, in all honesty, if I had to be honest, it's all I wanted. And it was because of my experiences growing up, right? Being an introvert, being shy, being hyper vigilant in my surroundings, always thinking that if I outstepped myself that I was going to be in big trouble. That was a big thing for me. Growing up, I always thought from one minute to another that I was about to get in trouble for something, in trouble by the teachers, in trouble by my parents, or just in my own feralness, we'll call it that, because we were adventurers in my family. But like I said, we were kind of an isolated family, and those adventures we kind of did on our own. Even as kids, I was off doing things by myself. Maybe it was because I didn't think people would be interested in my kind of adventures. Maybe again, it was in that introvertedness, that draw that I had about myself, that I was more comfortable on my own than around other people. As I grew older and actually had some guidance from teachers at school, right, that suggested drama would be good for me, that I got to be a little bit more extroverted. And not only extroverted, but get to realize when I did rub people, I didn't always rub them badly. That sometimes I actually got along with people and people got along with me. And I guess that gave me a little bit more courage to just be a little bit braver and expand a little bit more. It's really important for us to come out of our comfort zones. You guys hear that all the time, but it is so true. If I hadn't come out of my comfort zone, if I hadn't made certain choices in my life, who's to say what my life would have looked like? If you had told me 30 years ago that I was going to be on YouTube 6 days a week, I would have laughed. Maybe I would have been on YouTube, but just entertaining myself with history videos or reruns of American Idol or Survivor, right? Just in that entertainment. But in these past half a dozen years specifically, I have delved into topics that I never thought that I would have an interest in. But my curiosity, and that could have something to do with being an adventurer, even as an introvert. It's because, whoever or whatever gave me that sense of curiosity about the world. And maybe it was just in finding my place in the world. Hello, Tammy. Maybe it was just finding my place in the world. But nonetheless, right? I allowed myself to be drawn into it. And this is something you guys hear me say all the time, to just at the very least to be willing, right? To listen to a different perspective by somebody that you would never, right? Possibly even want to talk to or hang out with. And I have to tell you, some of my very best, closest people in my life, I might not have ever thought that I would have the opportunity that they would, like me as much as I would want to be liked by them, that I was able to feel my way around. And that's what's important, right? And lots of us, we don't use those feelings. We use those directives. We follow directives. We follow the rules. We follow interests, right? We let our curiosity take us places, but we don't use, right, those emotions, how somebody makes us feel. And I've made friends. I have had close relationships in my life with people I never thought that I would have an opportunity. But it was because I stretched myself, because I stepped out of my comfort zone, that I got a little bit past talking about the weather, right? That I was able to allow myself to, okay, I might be rejected, dejected. Somebody might not even give me any mind at all. They might just like pretend they didn't even see me or didn't even hear me, right? And growing up, I come from that generation, right? Where we were not supposed to be seen and we weren't supposed to be heard, right? And it was quite painful sometimes, when we were noticed or we tried to be noticed, we tried to be heard. And, right, being put in your place or to feel that maybe you're going to be in trouble for something. Lots of us, we grow up feeling like we don't have anything to contribute. I'm so grateful that at the very least that I was willing to experiment, willing to trust people, even though possibly I grew up to feel like, people weren't trustworthy, right? Or, were going to lead me astray. And of course, I got led astray. And I'm not going to say those strays didn't serve me badly in some ways, but being led astray offered up lessons, lessons in my flavor, right? My what was important to me in a relationship, or what was important to me in having those commonalities with other people, right? That it was all in my choices, even though the world tried to dictate something different for me. At the very least, I allowed myself to be pulled along. I'm so grateful for my YouTube channel. I don't know how many times I never ever had the idea that I was ever going to quit on my YouTube channel. Not once. But to be honest, I thought maybe YouTube might quit on me, and that never happened. Not once. In actuality, right? You have issues and you just shoot them feedback, and things get fixed right away. We live in this age of, right, bots and AI learning and digital and technology and innovation, and just speaking it aloud, and we find out that things just kind of work out for us, right? Sometimes they don't work out for us also, right? And there have been times like that in my life. But again, it's in trusting that in the end everything is going to be okay. Lots of times things go all hairy, scary in our lives. And I'm guilty of that too. And we just overstress and we think it's the end of the world. And we dig a small hole deeper, or there's a crack and we widen that crack until it's a huge mile long crevice that at any second we can fall into. And then what happens? We find that things kind of resolve themselves in the end, and we kind of get the message that sometimes, right, we are our worst enemies, that we make a little difficult situation like into an absolute catastrophe. Not to belittle the idea that catastrophes don't happen. We know catastrophes happen, heartbreak happens, grievances and anger, and right? But these are emotions. And when you feel your life out, and it's something that I have been learning in the past half a dozen years, is to just feel my way in my life. And, there have been moments, even when I wasn't woke to any of these ideas, that I used those feelings, not even understanding what I was doing. And I'm going, oh my goodness, nobody likes this person, but I think this person is just amazing. They have the best heart, and right? And then I had the opportunity to meet beautiful people on the outside and the inside. And these were people for sure that I thought would never have an interest in getting to know me. And yet these people came into my life and they became some of the most important lessons and the most important people in my life. But even in a bad relationship, even in those really grievance moments in our lives when we think there's no help and nobody cares and why am I doing this right? That we could just calm ourselves down and just say, would it be the end of the world? Right? Can we allow ourselves to be drawn into something else, even if that something else is nothing? Right? Because sometimes that's what we need, is just nothing, to be left alone, right? And I beat myself up lots of times because I live a life in a way that may seem to people to be selfish, right? To be isolated, and that's not the truth at all, right? That I feel my way around, and there are moments and seasons in my life where I have to apply myself. I have to be on my own because I have a lot of interests, And I make a lot of movement in directions where people just wouldn't get it. But that doesn't mean nobody would get it, right? It's just a matter of showing up and showing up with what you have in the moment, right? Knowing that if you're willing, that maybe you'll be pulled into something else. Or in your comfort zone, you go, oh, this couch, this remote control, it feels so good. It feels too good. How do we mix the pot? And sometimes mixing the pot just means getting off the couch and going to do some dishes, or getting off the couch and going for a walk, or picking up the phone and phoning a family member, or just sitting there with yourself and say, how do I feel? Do I really feel like sitting here on the couch with the remote control? Because if you just really feel that that's what you need, then that's what you need. And I have times like that too. Oh my goodness, where I just cannot do anything if my life depended on it. I just sit here and space out. But again, there are seasons for that. But unless you question it, right? Unless you say, oh my goodness, do I want to be sitting on the couch with the remote control? Is there something else I can do? Right? And we can always find something else that we can do. But we also have to think, is it just for the sake of being comfortable? Because you're not getting trouble in the moment. There are no catastrophes, or you've just had one catastrophe too many, and you're done. You're done with the crowds. You're done with the bills. You're done with your job. Right? And you just want to just be left alone. I think sometimes that's okay. The comfort I'm talking about is when everything is going okay, right? You got a few dollars in the bank, you got groceries in the cupboard, you got a roof over your head, right? That there is nobody to give you heck and stuff. That's when you really want to get into your emotions at that point, because you're probably not feeling too much because you're comfortable. Life is easy. There are no wrenches being thrown into it, there's no problems. And that is your comfort zone, right? Sometimes you need the comfort, but you could tell the difference because things are not going badly. You're not done with anything. There are no problems. There are no catastrophes, but you're feeling pretty good, right? And so you sit because you know if you make a move, you're in trouble, or you're going to break your favorite plate, or right, you're going to, I don't know what. There are so many things out in the world that could just trip us out. And because we don't want to be tripped up, right? That we just kind of sit still in it. And, that is your comfort zone, right? And we all have to stretch out of it. I was not a social person when I was in school. I was the fat kid. I always tried to sit at the back of the class with, right? I didn't wear glasses. I needed glasses, but I wasn't wearing glasses because I was so self-conscious about the way I looked already. And of course, my family glasses were expensive, right? I remember being taken to the optometrist and my parents saying, she don't need glasses, don't give her a prescription, right? And so I went through all those years in school right up to my graduation and never wore glasses. I got into glasses full time when I was 27 years old. Partly that was my fault, right? Because I stood in front of a great big floodlight that was shining on a legislative building, and I stared at it for 5 minutes because I thought it was going to be cool. We called it Purple City. And then you walk around for an hour and every light is purple, right? And the next thing you know, I'm in my glasses, right? And that might have been a good thing for me to do because possibly I know I needed glasses, right? But there was a circumstances where my eyesight got worse and I had no choice but to go see an optometrist. And sometimes we get those lessons, right? And they're not pleasant lessons, but in any case, they are lessons. And that's why I say all the time, it's in those baby steps and just keep moving forward, right? Those goals that you set. We were talking about goals yesterday, those little baby steps towards the things that we want, the things that we need, the things that will take care of us and take care of the people around us. But we have to feel it out for ourselves. Are we in a comfy spot in our life? And if we are, maybe it's time to step forward, right? To take a couple of steps forward, come out of what's comfortable, right? To stretch a little bit further. And that's not fun, but it's necessary. And especially in this day and age, right? Oh my goodness, my whole generation is on TV. And they're not like on TV, right? They are watching TV because they have no interest in this day of innovation, this day of AI learning. And it's not difficult, right? I'm not technically inclined, probably a little bit more than most people, but it's not comfortable when things trip up on me. But it's my responsibility and my choices just to haunch down and say, I quit. Or you try and find a way to resolve it. And that is expanding because the next time that happens, you're going to know exactly what to do. Can you guys hear the wind? Right? It's getting windy. We're expecting a great big storm. It's the weather is going to crash pretty hard for the next few days. I'm going to be walking over to my sister with some lazy cabbage rolls tomorrow, and then I'm going to make her a soup at her house. I don't know. I usually only when I go to her house, I'll walk one way and then I'll take a bus home, or I'll take a bus there and then I'll walk home. But I like the storms. I like walking in the storms, and I'm looking forward to my little adventure tomorrow. The snow and the storm isn't supposed to start until about 2 o'clock in the morning. I will be asleep by then, but the wind is starting. The wind is starting now, so I'm going to suspect that there's going to be a lot of blowing snow too, right? So I don't know what visibility is going to be like. I think with the alert that they did say that visibility was going to be very minimal. Right, and they don't hesitate. If they need to shut the highways down, they'll shut the highways down, right? And we'll just have to adapt and conquer in that, right? And it's things like that in the difficulties that we get the best lessons ever, right? If we search out the answers, right, that possibly we can avert, right, these problems, these hiccups, these wrenches that go into the engine. And that's why I say all the time, like baby steps. If you're one of those people that just have a difficult time in adventuring in your life, and whether it's like with Mother Nature or quitting a bad job and going to look for another job, or saying goodbye to friends that right, that don't rub you well, but because you don't have any friends and everybody else has got friends, and you don't want to feel like a strange person, you don't want to feel like you're all by yourself in it, right? That we hang around with people that aren't good for us, that we will pick up bad habits from. And there are lessons in that. Oh my goodness, I don't want to be stuck like that. I don't want to live my life like that, right? But because we're so afraid to make that movement all by ourselves, right? That we cling on to things and people and habits that don't serve us, and we are what we surround ourselves and with, and that's 100% true. Like, I can attest to that in my own life. And I am so grateful that in my choices and in getting out of my comfort zone and what was all comfy for me, right? The no hiccups, that I actually got to learn to be a content creator. And I'm so grateful, Tammy, that, you've been in the old stuff. I haven't even been in my old stuff. I haven't even gone in to watch that train station video explore again, like I said I was going to, right? It's right, it's kind of difficult for me to go way back then and see how much I have moved along. And it's important, right? Because lots of times we think we're not moving. We think we haven't learned anything. We think we haven't expanded. We think that, right, our evolution is stuck at ground zero. But that's because we're looking at ground zero. We're looking at right now. And if I looked at yesterday compared to today, I wouldn't, right? I might not notice any difference in how I've moved along. Sometimes you have to go back a few weeks. Sometimes you have to go back a few years. Sometimes you have to go back a decade or two. At the very least, you're going to look different, right? But for myself, going back to where I started when I first woke up to some of these ideas, wow, I think it would be a jaw drop for me, right? Because when you're in the mix of it, it's all survival, isn't it? It's adapting, it's conquering, it's riding the waves. And when you see it and actually realize, like, oh my goodness, I really did that. You're either going to say, well, if I did that, what else can I do? How else can I expand? Or are you going to say, oh my goodness, that was so hard. That was so scary. I never want to go through that again. Right. And then you stop yourself right. And then you stop where you are in the moment. And then maybe you'll just be in this moment for the rest of your life. I don't want to be that person, right? I am always curious. I am always expanding. And, I trust in Google and YouTube. Grateful, grateful. They're right. They have been my go tos for almost everything in this age of AI learning. But I am grateful for the roof over my head and the building manager who has made it possible for me to have a roof over my head, even as somebody who's not working in the moment, right? But that wasn't fun to go down there and express my situation, and right? Because we look at people and we think that they won't get it, that they won't understand, that they've never been in that situation that we've been in. And believe it or not, people have been, right? But they don't always portray it, right? They always, well, I'm not saying always, but quite often they portray themselves as no worries, no problems, right? I'm above you, right? And that's a kind of a sad way to live, because if you live that way, nobody will recognize that you have problems because you haven't expressed it, right? In asking for a little bit of help, right? I was taught not to ask for help ever. That was the way I was brought up, right? And I never asked for anything. And when I first woke up, to these ideas, that phrase, knock, right? Ask. Right? And I couldn't ask, and I thought I was a hopeless case. And I could have stopped right there because of my problem with the ask, right? But I just allowed myself to be pulled along anyway. I just allowed myself to be willing to expand a little bit further than where I was in the moment. And that was probably the best decision that I could make, because in doing that, I got pulled into this age of AI learning where I'm not asking anybody for help, but that doesn't mean I'm not asking, right? I am talking to Google. I am, right? Gemini. I am asking questions, and I am getting answers, and I'm getting sit ins with really smart people. I am getting documents, and I am getting headlines, and I am getting discoveries, and I am getting topics that I never thought that I would ever be interested in, right? And I've expanded in that. Okay, what does Tammy say here? Cindy, I think you did a great job even back 6 or 7 or 10 or 11 years ago when you did your videos and exploring and with your adventures. Thank you, Tammy, for saying that. That's very sweet. But I was so inexperienced, and I was so green in that. Even as a YouTube creator, all I had when I first started was my phone, and I had a camcorder. I invested in a camcorder, and it was a great camcorder. It worked really, really well. But I wasn't very good at editing, and I didn't know anything about computers, but it was in crashing my computers and not knowing how to edit and asking questions and watching how-to videos that I learned to get a little bit better. And I still use my phone to this day for my adventure videos, right? Google Pixel, they have an amazing camera. And the footage that I take, I even, right, kind of proud of myself now. If you've never seen any of my adventure videos, right? If you just come in and you see me here live every night, then yeah, go to my main page on my YouTube channel, and you'll see all my urban explorers, all my back road explorers, my bushcraft videos, right? And my provincial park tours that I'm so proud of. I have my entire retirement to explore provincial parks, and I am so excited, and I'm so looking forward to that. How am I going to manage that? I don't know. I don't even have a car, but I've been managing every single year, right? And it is just in that determination to not give up, to make movements somehow, to stretch myself, to learn a little bit better, to be a little bit more disciplined for myself, right? To apply myself in what interests me, and also apply myself in the things that are going to help open me up to understand the things that I got wrong, and the things that I got right, right? And then be able to serve that to other people, knowing that in my own experiences, those can be lessons for other people. And, I got that lesson right in the very beginning. And whether I believed it or not, 11 years ago, I was willing to be pulled along. And in being pulled along, right, and making those baby steps for myself, after a few hiccups, after a few scary situations and a few computer crashes and right, a few life crashes and a few wake up calls, right? I thought, oh my goodness, well, if I don't want that happening all the time, then I better make that movement myself. I better expand. I better make some choices in what I want to do with my life. Some of those dreams, some of those goals, some of those things that I never thought would be possible, like coming live, coming in front of the camera. It took me over a year to even show my face. And I was a YouTuber for a year. And the category that I was in, it was a good way to introduce me into, right, baby steps because I was urban exploring. So people weren't necessarily watching my videos to, right, see me. They couldn't help but hear me because, the excitement, like Tammy was saying, that some of my videos that I get overly excited. My curiosity gets me. And when wonder and curiosity comes together, it's like a plane crash. And in a good way, not in a bad way, but in a good way, right? I should have said fireworks. How's that? Or, right, a beautiful landscape, beautiful sunset, beautiful sunrise. And I can't help myself. My exuberance in what I love doing, it will come out, right? Because I've learned that it's okay to love life. It's okay to love what I'm doing. It's okay to do what I choose to do and not just do what's expected, right? Or what I expected. And that only happened because, right, I pushed myself. I was determined not to give up. I was riding waves. I was looking for answers. I was asking for answers. And in that process, I got to meet people that we're all unique. We're all different from each other, 100%. But it's in finding those commonalities. And it's something that I've been good at my entire life. It was a lesson that I learned. I wasn't woke, I was doing it anyway. But when I started waitressing, and I got to learn that, in waitressing, there are tips. And when you get those tips, it was all based not just in the service that you provided, but in your personality, how you cared about the customer, right? How you took interest in the customer and how that customer felt when they left the establishment. And I learned in that experience that we can find commonalities with everybody. But sometimes we don't know how to open up that conversation. So, like what I said when I first came into my live tonight, I said, oh, maybe I'll talk about the weather, right? And lots of people, they don't like that small talk, especially when they're smarty pants and right, and they're highly educated and they're self-motivated, right? That small talk is kind of irritating because, right, we love to talk about the things that interest us, right? But everybody is like that. And everybody has the right to make the choice whether or not to get themselves in a conversation. And sometimes it's just going by a table and just picking up something in the conversation. You go, boating? Oh my goodness. Well, let me tell you about that boat that I bought, right? And you just like find yourself in a conversation. Or somebody talks about golfing, right? And you want to get in the conversation too. And you go, I'm just using my own experience. I go, oh my goodness, golfing. Let me tell you a story about golfing. And they go, oh, you golf? Oh no, I don't golf, but I worked in a bar that had virtual reality golf courses in them, and I worked, and then right, and it's just interesting conversations, just topics that you might know a little bit of something about. And that's the best thing about being a curious person, right? Tammy, you're curious. And that's an amazing quality to have, right? To have curiosity. And for myself, that curiosity does not kill the beast. Curiosity is almost like music calms the savage beast, right? And in knowing a little bit of something, I was able to get myself in conversations. And, right, I put a livelihood over my head, a good one too. And it wasn't just about good customer service, even though taking interest in your customer is good customer service. It was so beautiful that it was something that I became good at. And it was something I was interested in. And it was something I enjoyed. And it was something I never, ever, ever, ever thought that I would enjoy. I thought it was just my livelihood, right? And it applied when I first came on YouTube. I had a little bit. And of course, that teacher, my English teacher who suggested that I join the drama class, right? To help bring myself out. And it helped out too, right? Sometimes you have to act, right? In order to be able to find your place somewheres. And sometimes in finding your place, you get comfortable. And in getting comfortable, you can become more open with other people. And that's what happened to me. And I was able to build great relationships, have great jobs, make good money, and come out of myself. And each one of my choices in my life, even though, I do like my alone time, I benefit from that alone time in my own contemplation, in my planning, and in moving towards my goals, because not everybody is interested in doing what I'm doing, right? It takes a lot of determination, it takes consistency, it takes time, it takes study, it takes experience. And if you're not willing to have those experiences, where you are today is where you're going to be tomorrow and the next day and the next year and the next lifetime, right? We should always, that's what evolution is that constant state of change. And I would much rather dictate my own change by using choices and using the fact that I got to stretch out of my what makes me feel comfortable. Let me have my sip of my coffee before it goes cold. A little bit warmer than room temperature because I made it like a few seconds before I went live. But it is in that consistency of doing those baby steps yourself. Because if you make those choices and you move towards them, right, you might be saving yourself from a 360-degree turn, a big yank. When I first started on YouTube, they happened all the time. Oh my goodness, the crashes in my life were so huge, so scary, so devastating, so heartbreaking, right? And I felt like I was having my life cut off at the knees. But I didn't let that stop me. I was determined. I'll show you, right? And if it has to be, I'll show you, then you use that steam. You use that emotion to keep you going. And not once did I ever fail my brand. Maybe in my experience, I failed it here and there, but those failures are okay because we learn from our failures just as much as we learn from our success. And sometimes we learn more by our failures. Oh boy, yes, we learn more by our failures than we do with our successes, right? And we have to remember, even though we succeed in something, there's always another mountain. There's always another hill to climb. There's always something bigger and further and harder to accomplish. And unless we're willing to understand that, right? When we hit that top of that mountain, we go, we did it. Now what? Now what? You put your whole life, all your dreams into that one experience and you've accomplished it. And you know what? It's going to be a terrible crash because you don't have goals and you don't have dreams. Remember what I was talking about? Was it yesterday or the day before? I was saying we were talking, no, yes, it would have been yesterday, my goals, right? That when I come home from that trip in September, I've always already got a point list of things that I want to accomplish for the next year because my fiscal year starts on October 1st, right? So when I get home from my trip, I usually have a few days and to finalize that list. Otherwise, I'm going to crash. I'm going to crash in the disappointment of what now, right? Right now. And in that sadness and in that depression of, right, not having a goal, not having a dream, what are we going to do? We're going to fall into those, right, those addictions, those things that we do habitually, or do we apply ourselves in something else? It's why people, when they go on diets on New Year's Eve, they get an exercise routine going on, right? Because they need to get into something else, which is the exercise. Otherwise, they're going to fail in their diets, right? And then what are they going to do? They're going to beat themselves up. And I know this because I've experienced this. And not only have I experienced this, I've experienced it through my sister's experiences too, right? And I understand there is nothing worse than quitting on yourself, right? And I would never, ever do that. You know, you think of people who just quit on life in total. I mean, literally quit in their life because life is not going their way. And it's not just not going their way. Nobody would just say, I want to go because life isn't good for me in this moment. No, it would have to be one hit after another hit that just affects us so mentally that we just don't think there's any way to come out of it, right? And we actually give up in that. But like myself, right? Anybody ever gets into that state, right? You don't have to ask anybody for help, right? Start with Google, right? And Google the problem and see what comes up. Get into some motivation videos. Oh my goodness, motivation saved my butt, right? Because I wasn't a motivated person, right? I was the couch and the remote control girl, right? For most part of my life because I didn't want to move. If I moved, I was in trouble. If I moved, my life was going to crash on me or somebody was going, right? It was just the way that I was. And lots of people are like that. And that's a truth and that's a sad truth. And it's a sadder truth because we are in this digital age and there's so many opportunities for us in advancement. There are so many different things. Yes, some jobs are gone, right? Some jobs are gone, but there are opportunities and innovation and incredible technology out there and different interests that I didn't even know existed. But how do you know it exists unless you let your curiosity and your emotions take you away? Even the sad emotions, ask those questions, see where it takes you, start somewheres. Maybe just a phone number or an address of a somebody who will sit and listen to you, right? But if you're anything like me, you don't want to be sitting and blah, all your issues onto somebody else. That's not the way that you were brought up, was it? It's not something that's in your makeup yet, right? But you can move towards that, right? That's innovation. And when you find that joy in your life, and even though life is crappy, crappy, crappy right this moment, there's no reason to say, right, that's it, I'm done. Because it's just not you. It's just not Cindy, right? Cindy's not coming back, right? This is my shot to make a little bit of movement for my sisters and my nieces and nephews and their nieces and nephews and that bloodline going forward, right? And not only that, in showing up here on YouTube and being consistent in that, being the examples for others that it works. Because I could have said adios, right? Not like I ever would. I would have just continued taking the beatings in life, not recognizing that I could be my own teacher. I could be my own best friend. And even if Cindy's not coming back, there are parts of me that are coming back. And every movement that I can make, every insight, understanding, every curious moment, right? Every adventure is something that those other parts of me will be able to take with them. And, maybe in my own understanding is that bravery carries forward, that courage carries over. And at the very least, those other parts of me will never, ever, ever, I'm doing my best, right? Will never, ever, ever find themselves in the situations that they found themselves for how many lifetimes? Who's to say? At least three generations. My generation, my father's generation, my grandfather's direct generation. And that's just on my father's side, right? My mother's side, it's a different story, but that's a different experience. I am my father's daughter. But when it comes to evolution, I truly believe that in the synthesis, it's going to be the light in their darknesses who never give up, who just put one foot in front of the other. But it's also going to be the dark touching the light for possibly the very first time, right? And that's what's moving forward, right? In that synthesis of all kinds, because it truly does take all kinds to make the world. And if I know anything in this age of AI learning, we are this close to each other. right? We're this close to each other now, and we have an opportunity to rub each other well and, you know, to actually find ways to be social, to connect with like minded, maybe like minded that we didn't even recognize that it was a possibility that there was anybody like us, right? And there is nobody like us. Each one of us is a unique, but understanding that it's okay to be unique, understanding that it takes all kinds to make the world. And I'm one of those kind. Okay, you guys, let's grab a card. Maybe I'll be relevant to the conversation, right? I came in ready to talk about the weather. And of course, right, those other parts of me, they never fail. But that's because I never fail, right? And in that mutual respect, I believe it's a mutual respect, in that making that movement and putting one foot in front of the other and being that evidence that it could be done, right? I have avoided lots and lots and lots of pitfalls that I'm certain were meant to take me down. And guess what? I'm still here, right? And I would have to say, better than ever by my own choices, by expanding, by stretching, by getting out of my comfort zone and caring about the people that I serve, right? And whether that's you, right? Or it's somebody else. Maybe it's only going to be one person in my entire lifetime. Maybe that person's only going to be me, but that's going to have to be good enough if that's the case, right? And yeah, we're going to leave it at that. I think that was okay. Okay, you guys, let's get into a word. I'll come in just to the comment just quickly and see what Tammy has to say here. But that was really sweet of you, Tammy. Thank you so much. Yes, you gotta drink your coffee while it is still warm and not cold. Okay, thank you for reminding me again. I'll have another sip. I don't mean to be wasteful, but it's part of, right, coming live. I want to be comfortable in it, right? So that the lesson could be comfortable. And if you hadn't noticed, I didn't jump up to rearrange my lighting like I usually do, right? I forget, oh my goodness, I forgot to turn that light down. I forgot to plug that light in, right? I forgot to fix my hair. Did I fix my hair today? Yeah, I think I'm just tighten my ponytail. Good enough, right? Okay. Here you guys. Yesterday we had the word integrity, right? That's a really good word because integrity makes it possible, especially in this age of AI learning, when we're this close, that we could be the example for so many people, right? People will never meet, people will never bump into. And that's the truth. But that's got to also be okay, right? It has to be okay. Because if it wasn't okay, right, maybe we would just say, that's it. Nobody's here, right? Nobody's come to hang out with me. And it's not like I've ever done one of these podcasts or any of these lives before and not been by myself, right? And I'd have to be okay. I'm practicing my craft. I'm being that example for myself. I come in, watch my lives. I'll be in tonight after my live show. I don't want to go too long. Otherwise, it'll be like 2 o'clock in the morning before I go to bed. But I do. I take my own lessons because lots of times I just come in here and I just let it fly and right. And then I miss the lesson. And it's important that these lessons too are for me. Okay, you guys, here we go. Just pull the card. We'll pull it right out of the deck. We take the front or the back. Tammy, tell me, are we going to take the front card or the back card? We'll let you choose. Otherwise, you know what word I'm gonna pull. Let me know. In the meantime, I'll just read this comment while you let me know front card or back card. I pulled 2 cards up there. You are good, Cindy. You speak from the heart, and that's okay. You can speak and go with the flow, what you feel to speak, and share that. It's great. Oh, thank you so much, Tammy. That's really nice of you to say. I'm going to count to 3. And then I'll pick the card if I don't get your answer. Front card or back card. 1, 2, front card. Here we go, Tammy. You picked it. Oh my goodness, look at that. This is a great card for this conversation that we had tonight. Experience paired with attention offers up gifts. What was I saying? Putting one step in front of another, right? Even if it's an uncomfortable experience, there are lessons in the experience, having sitting in a hospital waiting room, right? And if you had that experience where you broke your foot and somebody came in and they're all worried about their child because they fell off the monkey bars and stuff, right? That doesn't happen anymore because the children's playgrounds are just all rubberized now. But my day and age, we had the most dangerous big steel monkey bars and stuff. But let's just say, the child fell down and broke their bones, and it was the exact same bone that you broke when you were a little kid. And right, you can explain the experience or say, oh, and I remembered that my mom bought me ice cream every day. It was so amazing. Or she brought me home suckers, or I got to stay up late, and right, that little bit of attention. And then that's given the idea to that mother, oh my goodness, right? Like maybe it will be an experience for that child, and it'll be a way for us to connect a little bit better. And also in that experience, that mother gets to appreciate, like, oh my goodness, I got to watch my kids a little bit better when they go to the parks and stuff, right? That's just one experience. There's a gazillion out there, but it's in our own experiences that we can be the examples for others, that we can actually expand ourselves in a way that we get to keep moving, right? That we get to be a part of evolution. And maybe it's just our evolution, and maybe it's just our children's evolution, right? But I think that's pretty amazing that if we can learn things, if we can better ourselves in a way, if we can heal ourselves in a way, that we can pass that down to the people that we care about, so that they don't carry the same garbage that we carried, right? Okay, let's just come in there again. Experience paired with attentions offers up gifts, right? In what I do, in asking questions, in having the experiences that I do, in knowing that even though I don't have a vehicle, that I can adapt and conquer and find a way to have the experiences that I want to do, that in that it offered up the gifts to be able to be a better video editor, right? To be able to be a consistent YouTube creator. In my experience of keep showing up in front of the camera, that I get a little bit more comfortable, that I can show myself a little bit better, that I can be that person that people recognize as being genuine, being themselves, maybe somebody that they can trust, or maybe somebody that they're having a relatable experience to, right? That me and Tammy might not have ever met. And whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, right? That would be up to Tammy. I know on my part, I sure appreciate that she pops in and hangs out with me. And if you guys are watching in the background, it's not necessary that you pop in and say hi, right? It is a process for people, and lots of people, they just come in and they hang out in the background. I do it all the time, unless I'm truly inspired by something, and then it's, an extra thumbs up or something. But I'm not usually that person in the comments like Tammy is, and I so appreciate it. And it's her example that makes it so that maybe in the past week or so that I have offered up a few, not insights, but a few appreciations to some of those creators that you know uh, I didn't recognize that it would be that important, right? And maybe it was because I wasn't getting that consistent feedback myself that I didn't recognize, you get what you give, and that's the truth. And I have been aware that I have been a little bit more vocal in the comments, right, with people. And again, it's a learning process, and they offer up gifts. Every experience that you have offers up a gift, right? I'm going to go walk to my sister's tomorrow. I'm going to go make her some soup and drop off some lazy cabbage rolls for her. And it's going to be a big snowstorm. That's going to be curious. But whether but whether or not something comes out of that, well, some fresh air in my lungs for sure. That little bit of pride that I got some exercise when I've been kind of, right, sitting back and taking in the lessons and not, well, I've been taking care of myself in ways, right? But it's in taking my vitamins and minerals and in that contemplation and taking in my lessons and connecting with my family. And I've been busy listing and I've been busy selling. And all of those experiences I've learned from, right? But I tell you, this experience of being a YouTube creator, that was that was the biggest gift I could have ever given myself. And I have to say, that's an honest truth. And I have made some decisions in my life. I have made some choices in my life, and I've had some experiences in my life that have impacted my life greatly, but nothing like what I'm doing now. You guys, that's my good cheer, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Everybody, have a great night.